There are many mythical or semi-mythical lands that capture the imagination of Europeans during the great age of explorations and colonization that occurred between the 1400s and the 1800s. For example, the earliest Portuguese explorers in the 15th century believed that they would find the kingdom established by the legendary Christian priest king Prester John, somewhere far to the south of Egypt in Eastern Africa. And then the first English explorers who explored the North American coastline as early as the 1490s often wrote about a mysterious supernatural land called High Brazil, somewhere out in the Atlantic Ocean to the west of Ireland. And in the 16th and the 17th centuries, European explorers such as Sir Walter Raleigh went in search throughout Central and South America for the fabled city of gold known as El Dorado. And there were numerous other fabled kingdoms throughout history. But of all of these, the one with perhaps the most extended history and captivating mystery was the biblical land of Ophir. So, what, when, and where exactly was the biblical land of Ophir? Let's dig deeper. Mabuhay! Earn Kapampangan, luwid kayo! Welcome back to another history video. It's me, Kirby Aráullo, your friendly Pinoy historian. And if you are new to my channel, in this channel, I make videos about our people's history, culture, and everything in between. So if you like learning about the Philippines, Southeast Asia, and beyond, don't forget to like, share this video, comment down below, and please subscribe. And in today's video, we'll be digging deeper and exploring the search for the biblical land of Ophir. But before we begin, here are some few reminders. Today's video is just a brief introduction into this complicated topic. So check out the links below for a list of resources and recommended readings. And if you would like to support my channel and my research, please be my patron on Patreon or be a member of my YouTube channel, or get copies of any of my books, coloring books and ebooks, or any of the merch linked down below. In fact, I'm having a holiday sale this season, so make sure to follow me on social media so you don't miss out. So, what, when, and where exactly was the biblical land of Ophir? Let's dig deeper. So reports on the land of Ophir date back as far as the 6th century BC, when it was referenced in the Old Testament in the book of Genesis. And then further biblical references tell us of wise King Solomon of Israel sending expeditions from the Red Sea to bring back expensive and rare goods back from Ophir every 3 years. And these treasured commodities consisted of gold, silver, ivory, sandalwood, monkeys, peacocks, and precious stones and jewels, and many more. Now, given the numerous references to the land of Ophir and existing archaeological evidence which attests to trade with it in the Middle East, there is no doubt that such a place did actually exist. But frustratingly, the Old Testament references to Ophir did not make it clear exactly where it was located. And it was actually this vagueness that left many European explorers during the early modern period wondering if they would stumble across Ophir in their voyages of so-called discovery and colonization. There were numerous theories about where Ophir was located in the early modern times, and indeed widespread scholarly speculation ever since. Unsurprisingly, given the references to Solomon sending expeditions from the Red Sea, there has generally been a consensus that Ophir would have been located somewhere in the broad expanse of countries that now ring the Indian Ocean, or further to the east in the western extremities of the Pacific Ocean, or what is now Southeast Asia. For instance, Tommy Lopez wrote an eyewitness account of Vasco da Gama's journey around Africa to India in the first years of the 16th century or the 1500s, and he reasoned that Ophir was a biblical reference to the region around Zimbabwe and Mozambique. And this was because Zimbabwe and Mozambique were the center of the gold trade in sub-Saharan Africa in the early modern times. And then, 2 decades later, the Spaniards, aka Portugal's rival in the overseas exploration and colonization, proposed that the Philippines might actually be the land of Ophir. So one of the Spanish colonial documents in Volume 3 of the Archivo General de Indias, aka the General Archive of the Indies located in Andalusia, aka southern Spain, dating back to the beginning of the 16th century, describes how to reach Ophir by sailing from the Cape of Good Hope in Africa on a journey across the seas, crossing India, Burma, Sumatra, and even China, until reaching the islands we now call the Philippines. Now, the defenders of this theory strongly believe and assures us that Ophir was made up of a large number of islands in the same way as the Philippines. And just like Ophir, pre-colonial Philippines was also abundant in gold. In fact, some of the world's most complex and fascinating gold artifacts were found in the Philippines, like those from the pre-colonial kingdom of Butuan in what is now northern Mindanao facing the Visayas. And yes, our pre-colonial ancestors from Luzon, the Visayas, and Mindanao were dripping in gold. From the slaves to the kings and even the dead, everybody had gold and everybody wore gold. And sadly, unknown to many, these golden artifacts attest to the forgotten geopolitical, economic, cultural, and spiritual links between our ancestors and their friends, their cousins, and neighbors across the many early kingdoms and societies of Southeast Asia and beyond. In fact, speaking of these early kingdoms, and to expand your knowledge about today's topic and about world history, check out my new book on the fierce women of early Southeast Asia, where you can learn more about the status of women in early Southeast Asia and meet over 5 dozen inspiring women from the histories and the oral traditions of our ancestors. So in this book, you'll learn more about the Babaylans, the Minangkabaos, the Golden Age Queens of Luzon, the mighty empresses of the Majapahit, the enlightened queens of Angkor, the fierce warrior women of Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and many, many more. Now this book actually covers over 2,000 years of history, culture, and oral traditions about our fierce Southeast Asian ancestors. So don't miss out and order your copies today. Now back to our topic. The English mystic and writer John Dee, who was perceived by many and claimed to be a so-called prophet of the British Empire, actually discussed Ophir and where it might be located in his writings. So he kinda wrote extensively about it in his highly influential treatise called The General and Rare Memorials Pertaining to the Perfect Art of Navigation, published in London back in 1577. But his claims remain sketchy or dubious at best. In fact, John Dee himself had a dubious reputation as a sorcerer and basically a peddler of what we now call fake news and imperialist propaganda long after his death. And speaking of the British Empire, actually, Gunung Ledang, the highest mountain in the Malay Peninsula, which has long been revered by the locals and believed to be home of mythical folklore such as that of the legend of Puteri Gunung Ledang and the Sultan of Melaka, has been known to the English as Mount Ophir. In fact, to this day, many refer to it in English as Mount Ophir, long after Malaysia ceased to be a British colony. And unknown to many, interestingly, early Chinese seafarers also referred to Gunung Ledang or Mount Ledang as Kim Swa. Now, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but Kim Swa was believed to be from the Hokkien phrase for Golden Mountain pertaining to Mount Ledang. And other proposed sites and other theories pertaining to the location of Ophir were more fanciful still. They were like straight out of fiction, like literally fantasies. So for example, King Charles I of Spain, aka Emperor Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire, he employed the Italian historian Peter Martyr to write about Spain's discovery of the New World. And Peter Martyr stated that Christopher Columbus himself believed that he had found Ophir on the island of Hispaniola, the Caribbean island which is now divided between the countries of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. However, Columbus was, let's be honest, hopelessly lost when he found the Americas in his quest to reach Asia. And in suggesting that Hispaniola might be the biblical land of Ophir, let's be honest, he was actually hoping that he was closer to the Moluccas or the Spice Islands of Southeast Asia than he actually was. So these claims by Columbus were basically a desperate attempt to justify that he had found a westward route to the treasures of what is now Southeast Asia. And finally, a range of other writers actually used questionable linguistic and scholarly methods in the early modern times to suggest that the land of Ophir could be located somewhere anywhere from Ethiopia in Africa to Peru in South America. And indeed, one over-enthusiastic Spanish explorer, Alvaro Mendana, even proposed that the Solomon Islands in the Western Pacific were actually the famed biblical land of Ophir. And this was after he became the first European navigator to reach this archipelago in the late 1560s. And this is actually why we have the name Solomon Islands to refer to this archipelago, because he named the islands after the biblical king Solomon, whose trade with Ophir had immortalized this biblical land. But unfortunately for him, any substantial gold or any of the recorded treasures from Ophir was found to be lacking in these islands. Now, this is not to say that Solomon Islands does not have their own natural resources and wealth, because they do. In fact, the modern-day country of Solomon Islands relies heavily on their natural resources for their economy. But sadly, their natural resources have been massively exploited for profits for foreign multinational companies, not to the benefit of the local population. Okay, now back to our topic, back to the biblical land of Ophir. So, if we set aside these fanciful theories about the location of the land of Ophir, it is generally believed that the biblical references and other ancient records about Ophir were accurate in recounting that such a land existed. But it is, much more likely that this fabled kingdom was to be found, somewhere between Arabia and India, or in India itself, or even in the islands of Southeast Asia. Because these regions are the regions where the goods that were noted as being obtained from Ophir are available from. And actually, not just available, but abundant, like gold, ivory, sandalwood, monkeys, silver, peacocks, and precious jewels. Whereas, some of these commodities such as sandalwood and peacock feathers, these could not be obtained from places like East Africa back in biblical times. Moreover, there is additional evidence suggesting that these other regions from Arabia to India and Southeast Asia are likely identifiable with the land of Ophir. For instance, both the 1st century AD Romano-Jewish historian Josephus and the 4th century AD church father Saint Jerome wrote about Ophir in such a way as to make it clear that they believed it was in India. Others since have used linguistic evidence to suggest that Ophir was actually in Persia, or what is now modern-day Iran. And other interpretations of these evidences point to the island of Sri Lanka or even the East Indies, aka the islands of what are now the countries of the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. So in short, all of these theories are indeed plausible. In other words, they were indeed reasonable. However, despite the widespread interest in the land of Ophir during the age of explorations and colonization, to this very day, there is no definitive conclusion that was ever reached as to where Ophir was actually located. If I were to be honest, the truth remains that we simply do not yet have enough evidence to accurately pinpoint the exact location of this legendary biblical kingdom. Indeed, as late as the 1870s, when the Europeans began exploring and colonizing the interior of Africa for the very first time, explorers such as the German geographer Karl Mauch were roving around Zimbabwe in search of the land of Ophir and in search of King Solomon's mines. Others were not searching for Ophir, but they were still inspired by it. Such was the case with the town of Ophir, which was established in California back in the late 1840s, during the famous California Gold Rush of the mid-1800s. And thus, Ophir, a fabled biblical land that preoccupied such famed European explorers like Vasco da Gama and Christopher Columbus, has continued to fire the imagination of many in the centuries since. And despite the lack of definitive conclusions, Ophir continues to captivate the fascination and arouse such passionate convictions and let's be honest, somewhat blind faith of people into the modern day. Well into the age of social media, when misinformation and disinformation continue to be rampant and exploited around the world. So why exactly do so many people believe that Ophir is none other than the Philippines? Stay tuned for part 2 in the coming weeks, and we'll dig deeper and explore if Ophir really is what we now call the Philippines. So make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out when part 2 comes out. And that is it for me today. So if you like this video and learn a thing or two, don't forget to like, share this video, comment down below, and please subscribe. Let me know what you think about today's topic in the comments below. But of course, before we go, today's shoutout goes to Moses from Davao del Sur, Ismaya from Indonesia, Lucas of New York, and Angel from Peru. And syempre, special thanks and special shoutout to my patron, Ed Dombrowski. You know, this video and this channel will not be possible without the love and the support of all my patrons throughout these years. Kaya naman to all of you sa inyong lahat from, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, to Europe and here in the Americas, maraming salamat po. Or as we say in Kapampangan, dakal pong salamat. Or in Bahasa Melayu, terima kasih. In Bahasa Sug, magsukultuod kay mo. And in Magindanawan, syukran na benal. See you next time, or in Tagalog kita-kits, and in Kapampangan, Mikitix, in Espanyol, nos vemos, and in Bahasa Melayu, jum palagi.